Welcome to another episode of Cultivate. This is a show about you and your journey in the cannabis industry. It's moving fast, but there's room for everyone. Buckle up as we bring you the people and the technology that are blazing the trail. Everybody, welcome to another episode of Cultivate Live. If you have questions, please we'll put them in the chat and we'll get to them as we go. It's an honor once again to have back with us a regular co-host of the show. His name is Damian Solomon. He is known as the Plant Geek. Damian, how are you?
I'm doing good, Drew. Thank you. Pleasure
One of
to be
the
here
cool
again.
things that you've done repeatedly with me is introduce me to some of your friends, and we have benefited greatly by being connected to your friends. And today we have a special pioneer in the cannabis industry. Damian, you want to talk about our guest and give us a little background on how you know him?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Drew. So yeah, I'd like to introduce to everybody the phenomenal Mr. Keith Stephenson. So Keith and I met a few years ago. It was at an NCIA show in Oakland. At the time, I was with MedMen and went to have a meeting with him, and it was like an instant. We formed an instant bond. He's super easy to talk to, really humble guy. When you hear his story and you hear this work that he did early on in the cannabis scene in California, not only from having operations, having a dispensary, but also just from the lobbying side of things, you start to realize he's a very humble person, but he was one of those guys that really helped shape the industry for us, really helped advocate for medicinal cannabis. And he's one of the, original forefathers, I would say, to laying the groundwork to the modern cannabis scene in California. And so, I always love talking to him. He's always a very positive person. I feel better after I talk to him. He just lifts my spirits. And yeah, I'd love to tell a story. He's got a great story. So yeah, I wanted to present him to you guys and to the world. So take it away.
Keith Stephenson, welcome to Cultivate.
Welcome, Drew. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I mean, my gosh, with Damon, there's no better hype man than that. I mean, who can give a better introduction than he?
Well, we're going to spend the whole show talking about you, so get used to it.
Absolutely.
Look at the hat game this guy has. Put your hat right in the camera so we can see that logo. That's the Purple Heart 13th anniversary hat, commemorative hat. Are those available, Keith?
They were. It's kind of like a one-off. This year we'll do a 15-year anniversary hat, and I'll make sure both of you guys get one.
So those are collector's items, and you have the zip-up hoodie on as well with the Purple Heart. Purple Heart is the name of Keith's dispensary in Oakland, right off of Jack London Square, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We're right off the 880 freeway. Jack London Square is a waterfront district in Oakland. It's also the area where the Port of Oakland is. All of the international ships that come from Asia and far beyond dock here. I think it's like the number 4 or 5 busiest port in America.
So, Damian, your hat game's pretty good too. You want to put your that's the King Solomon nutrient line logo on Damian's. And I don't. There isn't a hat big enough for my head, so.
Oh, I have a pretty big head too, though.
So you got the extra large melon like me. You have a nice melon too, Keith. So, Keith, a pioneer. We said a pioneer in the cannabis industry, and where I want to start is you are a unique individual in that you're the first. Help me finish the sentence. You're the first
American black-owned cannabis brand in space. Also, the number 4 longest cannabis business in America itself, legally licensed.
So that's literally OG in terms of the regulated business.
Yeah, maybe double, maybe triple. depending on chronicalizing the story.
And
But yeah,
you started out, I read you were aspiring to be an airline pilot, and you became involved in the airline industry and moved from South Central Los Angeles to the Oakland area.
yeah. I had dreams. I've always been fascinated by flight. So if anyone knows me, it's like I always uh, put a measure on my life goals in aviation or flying. And uh, initially, that's I wanted to be a pilot. I didn't want to go to the military. I wanted to circumvent the military, but still accomplish being able to fly. So I said, well, before I learn how to fly, I want to be a federally licensed aviation maintenance technician. So I went to school for that, um, finished, was offered a position with one of the top three airlines in America, and I came to the Bay Area to do that, and never went back.
And that job beat your body up enough that you were in the proper condition to become a cannabis patient?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a duality to that. I had a juvenile form of arthritis, known as ankylosing spondylitis, something so rare that when I would go to the doctor's office, they would call other physicians in, kind of like, hey, come here, we got one, and we'd have dialogue. They wanted to know how I felt because it's one of those things that chiropractors learn about it in school, physicians learn about it in school, and rheumatologists know about it, but there's not, it's a very finite group of people in the world who actually have it. And, it's one of those things. So, I would go to the doctor's office. I have these aches and just inflammation issues. And I found out that, early on, these are things I had in my teen years. I just wasn't diagnosed. So self-medicating with cannabis, it would make the pain go away. And I could be geriatric one minute and smoke cannabis, and the next minute I'm doing 100 push-ups straight, 75 dips on a dip machine at the park. And I didn't understand the efficacy of cannabis and how one could really work through pain and alleviate pain.
But you didn't have any aspirations at the outset that you were going to end up in the cannabis business.
Well, no, but I did have my best friend Pete, rest in peace. Pete, he and I used to laugh because he says when we were 16, I told him, I said, man, I'm going to purchase my own island one day, and I'm going to legally grow cannabis, and nobody's going to be able to put me in jail because it's going to be my own island. So I did have an intimate awareness of cannabis ever since I was a teenager. And, I never had one of those moments where cannabis stopped me from producing. I was a very high achiever in school. I would just, even to this day, I just read 3-4 hours. That's what I do. So, it was like, for me, cannabis really saved my life early on, and it saved my life at the onset of having arthritis. And with, the type of arthritis I have, it destroys, it's an autoimmune disease. So it attacks the body and just eats away at the cartilage. And I had to have two total hip replacements by the time I was 26. And then later on, I had a total right shoulder replacement. And each time I had a surgery, I would rehab, but I made sure I have cannabis. And I can tell you, cannabis has accelerated my return and to recovery, and made me, it placed me in better shape.
So you own the Purple Heart Cannabis or the Purple Heart Patient Center. Is that right?
Yeah, we drop Patient Center. We just go by Purple. We rebranded to Purple Heart.
So your combination between the medical and the adult consumption conveyance, you're part of both, correct?
Yes.
So that was a outcome of about 2006. Was that when that started?
Yeah, Purple Heart was founded in 2006. Prior to that, I'd been in the cannabis industry in Oakland since I would say 1996, and that was my real introduction to the industry.
Let's talk about social equity for a minute, because my understanding is that you are the godfather of the social equity movement. Is that a fair statement?
Wow, you put a lot of stones on my crown today, buddy. I tell you, Drew, I am the thought leader behind social equity. I brought it to council members in the city of Oakland to let them know that, hey, I grew up in one of these environments in, urban America. Now, because of where I lived, I had the urban experience, but I was so close to academia, living across the street from USC and having 5 museums to play in, and the Olympic swimming pool and the LA Sports Arena and LA Coliseum. So if I didn't want to, if I wanted to escape, it was easy, and we escaped to USC. So to be I was the thought leader that brought the idea to those council members, because I recognize that a lot of individuals who grew up in the communities that I grew up in had been wrongfully provided the opportunity to be in the war on drugs. And, no one at the time when it was happening, no one knew about Iran, Contra, Ali North, the Sandinistas, just, now we're talking geopolitical issues of how this war was funded off the books. And, I don't think that was the only war ever funded off the books, but that was one that really, I saw the burden bore on communities, my community and other communities.
So I try not to be overly critical, but social equity as a concept is a great idea. And in reality, from just one white guy from Minnesota's outside perspective, has not been particularly successful in terms of creating the level of equity that would be appropriate for disaffected communities. Am I even on the right track?
To some extent. And initially you have to understand social equity is about giving those marginalized communities an opportunity to succeed or fail. They have an opportunity. And, while I'm not a social equity, I don't meet the criteria. However, I know that there are many individuals who have a talent that, they may have gone to prison because they were, involved in selling drugs that were deemed illegal. However, what if caffeine was illegal? What if high fructose corn syrup was illegal? What if sugar was illegal? It's just that they engaged in a form of commerce that was illegal. And I believe that there are those that have the skill set who are able to succeed in this space because they are brilliant businessmen and businesswomen. However, they have that one blemish on their record. And as an industry leader, it benefits and behooves us to provide a platform for those to succeed that are capable of. Now, as I've seen, and you very well may agree and know that social equity it's a hodgepodge of systems all across the country. And what I'm finding out is what works and what doesn't work. And you can't, it's very difficult to do anything without having some financial footing to get things off the ground. And that's where partnerships are able to take place. And it's like when you take a well-funded entity that wants to get into the space, those that have the ability to work with their social equity applicant and not just use them as a shield to acquire a license, I think those are the ones that will be very successful. One of the things that I've noticed is that diversity is the key, because America is made up of so many different cultures, so many different ethnicities, that there's no way of really understanding how to reach other demographics unless you bring those communities on board. And that's one of the things that I often look at when we talk about social equity in the space in terms of the partnerships.
Yeah, and we fully support social equity and diversity in our business, but it's such a, the theory or the idea behind it is so clean and so pure, and the reality of it in a lot of states is that people use it as a mechanism. It gets a little bit foggy as far as how successful those programs are. They'll continue to evolve. We had a guest on the 8th of March for the Women's International Women's Day. Nicole Ross from New Ra Labs was one of the guests out of Dayton, Ohio, and she had just opened her business, New Ra Labs in Dayton, and her whole family's involved, and she is just a dynamite lady. Super bright, super capable, and super determined to make it. And she had a lot to say about the diversity and social equity opportunity.
I can't hear you, Drew. I can't hear you.
Oh, I think you dropped off, Drew. Oh, he'll be back. Can you hear me, Keith?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Drew, you back?
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Go ahead, Damien. You were just about to take over as I was crashing in flames. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to continue on until you came back. So no, I was just, I'm a fly on the wall here. I really like hearing Keith talk. He's done a lot of good work for us in California. He's constantly going, up and down NorCal to SoCal to really drive for all kinds of change in the cannabis industry. He's a member of the NCIA, and he's a really he's been advocating for us for a long time, and that's something that I just really appreciate. I want to tell him and tell everybody that I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do, but I couldn't do it without people like Keith. So yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. And you're getting a little choked up saying it. I love that.
Oh, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Damon's one of the guys that I really enjoy our friendship in the industry. Like Damon said earlier, like we met, we hit it off, and just it's good industry talk and peership. Many times we want to have these type of relationships, but however, it doesn't always manifest. But Damon and I, we do the cannabis talk. Anything he needs, he can call me for it. Anything I need, he always extends his Rolodex, and he extends himself freely to me without any expectation. Sometimes in this space it's about quid pro quo. Folks are really protectionist with their own networks, and Damon has never turned me down from connecting the dots. So that's what I like to say.
He was very kind to share you with us. So I want to talk a little bit about last year and what happened here in Minneapolis and the impact that it's had on your business and your life, Keith. Last May, we had the George Floyd tragedy in Minneapolis, my city where I grew up, devastated by the event, the atrocity of the event, the protests that enlarged into a major violent, destructive outcome in Minneapolis. We lost 450 to 500 buildings in my city, and you suffered in Oakland as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, Oakland tends to be the ground zero for protest. The Bay Area itself, especially Oakland, has a rich history and protest and also founding identities. Oakland is where the Black Liberation Movement started. San Francisco played a very central part, along with New York, in terms of having gay rights. And, when things happen, people protest in Oakland. So when the George Floyd murder happened, and I'll say what it is, it was a murder. The protests happened in Oakland, and through all of the protests I've seen, the larger protests, they totally they take all the resources from the Oakland Police Department. And this was this was another one of those events. So the Oakland Police Department called in for mutual aid, and with mutual aid, they brought in the California Highway Patrol, which are like our state police, and they called in other jurisdictions for assistance. And with all that was going on, a coordinated group of criminals chose to use this as the perfect opportunity, use this moment for the perfect opportunity to break in not only my business, but many other cannabis businesses. And it was like, the first night it happened was on Friday, May the 29th. And, I'm like looking at my security cameras and I see a guy walking through my front door, like walking literally through the front door. I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, whoa, no, it's not happening. I'm like, no, this guy's really walking through my front door. So I get down there, I call the police. They meet me down there. And thankfully, I have a great relationship with the police. I did a gun buyback program with them in 2012. And ever since then, I've been like, viewed as a good community partner. And got like six, seven police officers down there. Call the contractor out. They boarded it up. 12 o'clock, I leave. I'm looking at the cameras, 2:30 in the morning. I see a guy with a sledgehammer, like a mallet. I wouldn't call it a sledgehammer. He's trying to knock down the 4x8s. Now I had to board up the front door with 4x8s. This guy punches a hole through it. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm still watching the cameras. They leave. I go home. They go home or wherever they were at. Saturday night, nothing happens. Sunday night, May 31st, I'm watching the cameras, about 11 o'clock, and I'm seeing all these cars drive up, and they descend on Purple Heart. And they're like breaking down the 4x8s. I'm seeing them wheel tools in, like pneumatic tools, because I was an aviation maintenance technician. So I know pneumatic hydraulics. I know all of the tools. And I'm like, what are they doing? And then I'm watching the cameras from the inside. Wow. And they pry open the door. And I have a bulletproof door with a multi-lock, which is a high-grade lock that you can't make any key. You have to go to the locksmith that installed the key. You have to show them your ID. You have to write your signature on a piece of paper so that it matches the signature of the card that they have on file of you. Then they have to punch these codes into a machine. So that's how intricate the key is. It has a steel bar. It has a steel housing so that if you're drilling through it, it basically dulls the drill bits. High-end lock. They pried the door off of the frame with the deadbolt still engaged. So as I'm watching these guys run in the business, run inside, it's like It's like, wow, man, like what's going on? Like three guys went and grabbed the ATM machine, and everyone else is just like a free for all. And I was on the phone for 2 hours on hold with 911. And it's just that just tells you how serious it was. My alarm company is probably one of 6 alarm companies that I know that service the Bay Area. They said in Oakland alone they had 600 alarms.
So they were overwhelmed.
Yeah, it was overwhelmed, and it's like, you know, what can you do? I mean, you go down there and you engage them to protect your business, and there's no win in it for you, the business owner. Someone you shoot someone, kill someone, it falls back on the business owner that you didn't have to do it. So they break in your place, they break in your business, destroy your business, take product, destroy the IT peripherals, take computers, things of that nature. And the insurance company asks you, all of these asinine questions. It's almost like, the insurer asked me, did you lock the door? I'm like, why would you ask me that? If I lock the door, do you think the door would look like this? And it's like, did you set the alarm? Yes, I set the alarm. And do you know them? Like come on now. And those questions, they were insulting, but because as a policyholder and business owner, you're impacted, and that's not the conversation you want to have with your insurer. And they just the insurer drags you on, drags out the story, only to deny the costliest part of the claim. And the insurer denied my business interruption insurance claim. They said, well, you were already closed. I said, I was temporarily closed.
Oh, for COVID?
For COVID, yeah. And I said, you see these sneeze guards and these things that I installed to protect my workforce as well as the customers. I said, you see this fogger machine, you see this disinfectant. Like you don't purchase this just because. You purchase this to make sure you have a sterile environment. And I said, because the governor says we're essential businesses, doesn't mean that we have to open. Like I come from a safety sensitive industry. Everything that I do is safety sensitive, whether it's washing dishes and making sure the knife's pointing down in the dish tray. I mean, when you work in a safety sensitive industry for so many years, you become predisposed to just always thinking about what if. And it hurt me, because it was very stressful. You have an insurer saying, well, you were already closed. I said I was temporarily closed. I wasn't permanently closed. But when my business became damaged to the point where I couldn't open it, that's when the business interruption claim should have started. Now, ask yourself, and I'm not a lawyer, but I watched a few Perry Mason shows. If you're not open and the business burns down, they're going to cover the claim. So what I've learned is insurers pick and choose what they wish to claim. And my attorney told me, he said, Keith, you have to understand, the insurance industry is in the business to make money. And the only way that they can make money is if they pay you less than what they owe you. So then I had to go out and get an insurance attorney, because my business attorney handles business, employment, contractual things. And, I utilize attorneys like you would utilize physicians. You're not going to go to a dentist when your shoulder's aching. So you have to use attorneys in their right disciplines. So I engaged an insurance attorney who has extensive experience defending insurers. And, he just laid out to me how insurers move. And I just, it's unimaginable how insurers get away with the things they do. And if there's one thing that I've seen that most people agree on is no one likes the insurers when they don't pay out on claims that they should.
So you've been effectively closed since that event, and I think that's the bad news is you've been closed for coming up on a year.
Yes. I've been closed for a year.
But
And
the good news is you're coming back.
Yes, I'm opening up a lemonade stand out of the lemons that I was dealt.
So when do you think you'll be open again?
June or July. I don't see anything impacting us to prevent us from opening then. However, it's just one of those things where when we open up, we want to roll out. We want to have our own branded products, and those are things that we're really working on now because in the industry, like Damon says, I've been around 12. I was around 12 years before the state even started issuing their licensing. So I broke a lot of brands in the space, and not one did I charge them sliding fees or anything like that. And with some of the newer companies, they acted as if they did me a favor. And I'm like, how are you doing me a favor? I'm giving you shelf space at Purple Heart. We had built a very well-known brand, very safe brand with our testing. We were one of the earlier operators to do our own testing, and those testing regulations and operating procedures were later adopted by the California state. Early on, Lori Jackson, Dean Graffilo, many of the BCC members, before they even were the BCC, many of them came from the alcohol beverage control. And that was an opportunity for me to interface with them. I was the first cannabis retailer that Lori Ajax had visited. And from there, they didn't understand cannabis. They understood alcohol and how to monitor this inebriating experience. So that was the closest that they had to cannabis. And I was one of those early operators that they spoke with. And, I share with them about when I was developing my own hydroponic brand back in 2010, how it was modeled after zero to low heavy metal analysis. And these are things that the state, they didn't know anything about it. And, because I studied cultivation and the products, and I maybe not at the level that Damon has, but I understood that everything that was poured into the soil or was in the amendments that were there was going to be uptaken through the rhizosphere of the plant, which is the root structure. So I was, just enjoying that moment with them, and to see those regulations and just different things, myself and my peers to be able to set forth the pathway in the industry. The foundation has been great as well.
So we talked about you being a pioneer in this regulatory structure in California, and I don't want to blame you, but from the outside looking in, and I spent a couple of years in California working up north with growers. What a tough experience for permitted operations to go through, trying to traverse the landmines in the California regulated market. Can you talk about the way things are today and maybe some insight as to where you see this going in the future? Because it hasn't been a particularly smooth ride for anybody in the industry.
No, and I'll just give you a little backstory. So when we had MCRSA, the Medical Cannabis Regulatory Safety Act, that succeeded Prop 1015. So when we went to MCRSA, the labor unions in Sacramento were pretty much guiding the industry, and there was a built-in, I'd say, regulation that stated distributors, that the industry had to use the distributors of the Teamsters, and those distributors Also, so those drivers that work for the Teamster drive all the alcohol, and they were going to build in a 30% margin, profit margin for the distributors. So that didn't sit well to a group in Sacramento. So that group put Prop 64 on the ballot, and Prop 64 allowed for recreational adult cannabis sales. Now, when Prop 64 came on board, that's what the citizens of California voted for. No one understood what a 15% excise tax looked like. No one understood all of these baked in taxes. It wasn't like it was covert. It was right in our faces. And some folks in the industry said the taxes are going to be high. This was a very small voice. And then other voices in the industry were saying, yeah, let's vote for it because it's recreational adult sales. So you take that, and then you take the prior language that we had already had in the city of Oakland, and I think it was introduced in 2009, that said adult cannabis sales will be 10%. We didn't even have adult cannabis sales across the board in Oakland in 2010. So you pass Prop 64, it becomes law. Now you've got this 10% local tax on top of it. And then, even if you remove the 10% local tax, the tax structure is really high. And I'm also one of the 22 cannabis advisory commissioners for the state. And I'm the only one with documented taxpaying history. So there's Kristen, Kristen Nevedal represents the cultivators. However, outside of us, there's not much of a cannabis voice on there. And the only way that this tax structure is going to become amended is either when the process of attrition happens and those that are well capitalized that are coming from the cigarette, alcohol, Wall Street come in with the money and say, you know what, now we have enough or a larger share of the industry, now you could change the taxes. Because it's very hard to make a profit when your tax structure is 60%. You have all of these insurance policies you have to have general liability, product liability, workers' comp, employee protection liability, directors and officers' errors insurance. I mean, how do you make a profit? You still have to pay local permits, state permits. It's like, how does this end?
Well, let me ask you this: if you were the king of California, and you're
just say the governor. I'd rather be the governor.
If you're the governor, although the governor is I won't go there. Yeah. What should the tax rate be?
3% on cannabis.
Say it again.
The tax structure should be 3% on cannabis. All across the board. No matter what you do, the excise tax should be brought down to 3%. We should pay a sales tax, and that's it. We should be treated like any other industry. And we should be allowed to grow and flourish and be able to put the profits, top line, the revenue back into the company. Right now, if you look at a top line revenue, your top line revenue doesn't speak of the margin. It doesn't speak to profitability. What top line revenue is commensurate with the amount of taxes that you owe. That's it.
So you heard it here first on Cultivate Live, the call for a reduction in the tax from 60% to 3%, which I think is a dynamite idea. I heard you talking about taxes on the Green Rush podcast, and the notion that lower taxes would create an opportunity for more revenue ultimately in the process with the regulating agencies. And that's a really hard concept for a lot of people to get their head around.
Well, yeah, when you live in a fiscally mismanaged city like I do in Oakland, that has $15 million in taxable revenue that they take in, and you have nothing to show for it, it's a travesty. You know, this is one of those situations where less is more. You lower the taxes, you allow businesses to be able to take those taxes and reinvest into their operations to scale. Now, what happens when you take a business like Purple Heart, which is just, which only operates in the cannabis retail space, and you allow us to take that revenue and allow us to vertically integrate the business? Now you can become a greater hub in the business of cannabis, and you can attract other industries. However, when the city believes that they still have a first mover's advantage for the cannabis space, there's not much that you can do about it. So, even with the state, less is better. There are reasons why companies are setting up in other jurisdictions, because it comes down to taxes. If you take top line revenue in the city of Oakland of $5 million, and you have to pay 10% of that, well, in aggregate over the course of 10 years, that's $5 million you spent on taxes. Now, what does your business model look like if you took the $5 million, you purchased property, you called Damon in to build it out for you, you called Damon in to help you scale it up. Now you're generating more revenue and you're diversifying your portfolio. You've gone from not only just retailing, but you've gone into cultivation, possibly manufacturing, possibly distribution, if not all the other verticals. Less is better. Less is more.
So I want to change the subject because I've taken you down two really bummer trails talking about the destruction of your business last year. I'm not laughing at it. It's
it's a reality.
I took you there, and then I talked to you about taxes. Damien, I'd like you to revive our drooping spirit on Cultivate Live by talking about plant genetics and why Keith is so deeply involved in plant genetics.
Yeah, definitely. Like Keith alluded to, he really sees the opportunity to build the Purple Heart brand, and when he launches, when he reopens his store again, he wants to be able to have have branded products in there. And so Keith has done a fantastic job. Again, him having such a deep history in the industry, he knows a lot of people, and he knows how important genetics are from the retail side of things. So he's amassed quite the war chest of genetics. And correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, I think the last time you said you had something like 250 different genetic strains, or
no, I have 900.
900. Yeah. 900 different strains that he wants to put into practice and get that going, and really have that genetic diversity out there for patients, and ensuring that he's able to meet the market demands, right? And also even shift market demands, or change the demand from one strain group over to another. And I think that's the power of being able to have that insight into the marketplace on the retail side, is you really do see the effect of having a diverse portfolio of genetics and really custom tailoring to each and every customer that you have. So it's a great thing. I mean, for me, genetics, it's exciting because sometimes it's like, you feel like a kid in Christmas, because once you actually harvest that strain at harvest time, you get to really enjoy it. Up until then, you're wondering how it's going to work. This is going to be a good strain. But then once you get that one that just pops, or you get that real banger, and then everything else, all your hard work just melts away, because that's the one that's going to set you apart, right? It's like the Holy Grail, and having access to 900 different strains, there's going to be a lot of Holy Grails in there. So
yeah,
it's going to be exciting. Keith, that's a lot of seeds, man.
Yeah, Drew. I mean, so my initial foray into this industry, beyond being a cannabis consuming patient, was I was a cultivator, and I love cultivating. I had 22 lights in my basement, fertigation systems, air sensors, air relays, just everything on computer, and that was like my Willy Wonka factory. So, being a cultivator, I understood that most cultivators of today just bastardize the strains. What they do is they take what's popular and they cross it with what's popular. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
So when you have that type of mentality, we lose genetic seeds. We lose genetic strains over the course of years. And I felt like me being one of the first movers in the industry, but but also understanding, seeing the big money coming to the space, saying, okay, how are you going to protect yourself so that you can grow? And I said, well, if I have 900 strains and I cross them across the board with each other, that's 810,000 options. And I would go to like the Emerald Cups and I would just clear out, all whatever, if they were well-known seed banks or unknown, I was just buying everything. I mean, you could talk to Brandon from third gen growers. He knows me. I was like, look, man, give me everything you have, whether it's on the table or not. And I would just buy everyone's seeds. And it's almost like buying baseball cards. What you're looking for is that one rookie card.
Right.
If you got that one rookie card, you've got a hit. So this was a way of me keeping myself in the mix regardless of what happened in the industry. One of the things that these well-funded groups come in with, they come in with capital. They come in with knowing how to scale a business, but they don't understand cultural norms of the cannabis industry, specifically California cannabis culture, which is what everyone wants to emulate, which is what everyone wants to be. So when you have a culture and you have the understanding of what this culture is, it gives you an advantage. And then when you have the tools and the resources to produce these strains, you have another advantage, because these corporations, they don't understand how important the genetics are from way back, whether it's a skunk #1, whether it's a true train wreck or AK-47 or a Romulan or a Acapulco Gold, Panama Red, or Purple Haze, or a real Thai strain. They understand what the top 25 strains are to this day. And you walk into most places and that's what you see. So how is Purple Heart going to differentiate themselves from all the other operators in the space? And how do we build brand value and brand loyalty? You have to have something different, and you have to love this to where you can get up every day and not be paid and still love what you do. I love the cannabis space. I love competing. I love the talk. I love the jewels we share. I love understanding different growing mediums and learning. That's really what it's about, is learning. I never feel like I know everything, but all the experience that I have, this is what I love to do. This is what I can get up and do every day. Some days are tougher than others, but ultimately, this is what I love to do. And this is really about shaping an industry, like Damon said earlier. Like, how many times in our lifetime do you get the chance to architect two different industries? I've seen the advent of the internet, and I've seen the advent of commercial sales of cannabis. So, this is great for me.
Well, and you've had a lot to do with the development of the industry in California. We have to wrap up. I can't believe how fast 50 minutes goes by when you're having a conversation with people like you.
Likewise.
I'm really grateful that you took the time to be with us today. I want to invite you back.
Please do.
And let's start talking about cannabis next time.
Yes.
And talk about the future of cannabis and what you're excited about for the future. I'm Damian, thanks for sharing your friend Keith with us, man.
No, anytime. Anytime.
I'm going to call Damon the true glue of the industry. He connects us all.
So
Yeah.
as Keith mentioned, if you're interested in any knowledge base about how to construct or run or fertilize or irrigate a grow facility anywhere in the world, Damien will help you at plantgeekconsulting.com. I think that's what it is.
Actually, I don't have a website for my consulting, but it's plantgeekconsulting@gmail.com is my email.
So
Find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
You are
find me
the
on
king of
Instagram.
LinkedIn. You got a lot going on. You've got a lot going on LinkedIn too, Keith.
Hey, you know what? I'm just really getting into position to where I'm able to tell my story and really work on the things that I wanted to. So, everyone has their time and their moment, and there are many of us in the industry. And what I really enjoy is that we all have great dialogue together. So, Drew, I'd like to thank you and Bovida for allowing me this opportunity, and Damien for connecting us. And if you know one thing about Damien, he's the master of control room environments.
He's also got some great friends, and we're glad he shares them with us. Keith, thanks for being with us. Damien, thanks again. This has been another episode of Bovida's Cultivate Live. Keith Stephenson from Purple Heart Dispensary in Oakland, California. Purple Heart will be back in business midsummer. I hope you'll allow us to help you reopen, and we'll send you some goodies to give away and help people understand how to take care of their cannabis. Damien, thanks again. We'll sign off for now, and we'll come back with Keith at a later date. Appreciate you joining us. Cultivate Live. Thanks a lot.